Hello and welcome, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Look, I'm wearing multiple shades of red and pink just for you. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite movies. One that most people, I get the feeling, do not like. And I get it. It's Shakespeare. It's a musical. Right off the bat, those are two things that some people just immediately check out. Not interested, don't like Shakespeare, don't like musicals. Well, I love musicals and I love Shakespeare, so I'm probably not going to change your mind. In fact, I actually did my own adaptation of this source material, which I haven't really released to the public. We had some sound issues. I'm still working on it. Maybe one day I'll release it for you. But yeah, just a couple clips to let you know I'm not lying. It exists. Love's Labour's Lost is one of Shakespeare's early comedies, and it's amazing how well this story interacts with music and with screwball comedy. And so, what did Kenneth Branagh think? Hey, let's make a screwball romantic comedy using Shakespeare's dialogue. When you think about like an art house experiment, something where you take a bunch of different elements of film and just throw it together to see what happens, this is kind of the first thing I think of. Not the pretentious student films that made somebody's career. No, Kenneth Branagh, at the height of his fame, coming off of something like Hamlet, deciding, hey, you know what? I'm going to do something really weird. And yeah, the reviews were not kind to this movie. But from the first time I saw it, I fell madly in love with it. And since I'm so in love with it, I thought the best thing I could do on Valentine's Day was share that love with you. So, this is Kenneth Branagh's, and he wrote, directed, and starred in it, because of course he did, 2000 adaptation of Love's Labour's Lost. The film has opening titles that immediately take you to that era of Top Hat and Shall We Dance. You just expect Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers to come tap dancing across that satin. I think something that was really nice about Kenneth Branagh is that he understands that a lot of people don't understand Shakespeare right off the bat, and so his movies are very accessible. He tends to do a lot to try to help you understand the dialogue. In this case, he actually has little pictures of each character next to their name, which I think is very helpful, especially for younger people around in high school who may be just dipping their toes in the Shakespearean water. Now, this film does something kind of interesting, much like the Laurence Olivier Hamlet, where Hamlet, opens with a little monologue that Olivier reads in voiceover, but then he adds a line that is not part of Shakespeare's dialogue, where he explains that Hamlet is the tragedy of a man who cannot make up his mind. Much in that same vein, Kenneth Branagh creates these little 1940s newsreels, kind of explaining the plot to you and priming you so that you get what's happening in the scenes before the scenes start.
War may be gathering over Europe, but here in Navarre, the young king, he and his companions are to cast off their military uniforms and devote themselves instead to a rigorous 3 years of study. They'll sleep little, eat and drink less, and devote themselves instead to an inspiring program of self-improvement. This is the king's absolute insistence that no women will be allowed inside the court. Sorry, ladies, but he is the king.
I studied Shakespeare, okay, and I've been in a lot of Shakespeare plays. I can listen to Shakespeare dialogue, and I do get it. So I can't tell you what it's like as an outsider, just 100% honesty here. But I will say that it's a really good effort, and the fact that a lot of the lines were cut down. Probably more than 50% of the dialogue in the entire play was cut out of this adaptation. But I don't mind that for the specific reason that they speak a little slower. They add a lot more inflections to kind of give you as close to a naturalistic reading as you can. Whereas in something like, for instance, the David Tennant Hamlet, everybody is chattering at breakneck speed, and if you're not a big Shakespeare fan like me, you're going to be totally lost 5 minutes in. The costumes and sets to this movie are gorgeous. Everything really looks like it just came out of a 30s or 40s musical. Its colors are also so vibrant and beautiful. I love the colors in this movie. And the cinematography is really good too. I love the way he emulates that kind of old school style. And I gotta say, also, before we get too much into this, that the cast is just unbelievable in this film. We got Kenneth Branagh himself, who of course stars in most of his movies, But you also have Alessandro Nivola, Matthew Lillard, who I simply adore. I think Matthew Lillard might be one of the most underrated actors ever. Yeah, Nathan Lane and Timothy Spall, who aren't in the movie a lot, but they are acting their butts off in every scene they're in. It's kind of crazy. Even Alicia Silverstone is in this movie, people. It's kind of weird, but I love it. Our first song kind of sets the tone for things. It sort of interrupts the entire flow of Shakespeare's dialogue so that they can all interact with each other in this very free-flowing, choreographed dance sort of style, and then when the song's over, they're all like, anyway, go back to performing Shakespeare.
And train our intellects to vain delights.
Why, all delights are vain.
I've seen for days that you've got some ways that must be checked. In you I never can detect the slightest sign of intellect.
I'd rather Charleston.
Do-do-do-do. Think of what you might be.
I'd rather Charleston.
Do-do-do-do. With you. Well, sit you out.
The delivery is just stellar in this film. I mean, for instance, there's a line which any Shakespearean actor would simply say, "For well you know, the Princess of France." But Kenneth Branagh instead delivers the line like this.
This article, my liege, yourself must break, for well, you know, here comes in embassy the French king.
And the same thing goes for all of these actors. They just have stellar delivery. We also meet the Princess of France, played by Alicia Silverstone, and her ladies in tow, along with Boyer, their manservant. No, that's not as kinky as it sounds. And when the 8 people of the royal court meet, my gosh.
The colors, Duke! The colors! I'm colorblind, kid.
Yes, the colors! The colors are so beautiful. And they help the audience once again, because blue goes with blue, red goes with red. You're not lost. The visual storytelling gets across who belongs with who, and you can't get confused even if you forget these characters' names. Again, I think that's great, because a lot of people coming into a movie like this will have never seen the play it's based on, and probably don't have all these characters' names memorized, unlike me. Because I've seen this movie too many times, and I've been in 3 productions of Love's Labour's Lost. They do even more fun kind of physical gags, like when the boys are all bribing Boyer to find out the names of their ladies that they're in love with.
I beseech you, a word. What is she in the green? She is a most sweet lady.
Not unlike so.
Now, I think the way they cut down this script is very good. For instance, the king delivers a very long monologue about the surrender up of Aquitaine and what that means for the diplomacy of their 2 countries. But by cutting it down and making it more conversational, we actually get more of a sense of who these people are. Now, I don't necessarily think in a play that it should be cut down, but in a film where you're trying to focus more on the characters in a filmic sense rather than in an auditory sense, that makes good, well, sense. And by cutting these lines down, the camera in the editing is allowed to do more to give us a sense of what these characters are feeling, both about the situation and towards each other.
You do the king, my father, too much wrong, and wrong the reputation of your name, in so unseeming to confess receipt of that which hath so faithfully been paid.
I do protest I never heard of it, and if you prove it, I'll repay it back or yield up Aquitaine.
We arrest your word.
Tomorrow, you shall have a sight of them.
It shall suffice me.
We get this great little setup which establishes Rosaline and Baron's relationship.
Did not I dance with you in Brabant once?
Did not I dance with you in Brabant once?
I know you did.
And it's instantly cut in by the song I Won't Dance.
I won't dance, don't ask me. Why should I won't dance, how could I?
Yes, again, the song is random. It comes out of nowhere. And much like every version of the song I Won't Dance, they're dancing during it. I love this movie. I love it so much. Now, the structure of the film changes up the play dramatically, which means that a lot more is kind of put together, so we get a sense of kind of an A plot and a B plot, whereas the play is much more of an ensemble piece. It kind of meanders all over the place. We focus more on the king and the princess and the lords all getting to know the ladies, and finally, once they're all established, we meet Armado.
There did I see that low-spirited swine, that base minnow of thy mirth.
Me?
That unlettered, a small gnawing soul.
Me?
That shallow vessel.
Still me?
Which, as I remember, is custard.
Oh, me.
The fantastical Spaniard, played by Timothy Spall, and the court jester, Costard, played by Nathan Lane. There's a great little bit which is adapted partially from a letter that Armado writes in the original script of the play, which is interpreted as a monologue delivered straight from Armado. And I think that works really well in a filmic content. Armado caught Costard having, shall we say, relations with a lady named Jacquinetta. Now, of course, all the men in the court signed the contract. They're not supposed to see ladies or have any ladies in the court at any point. Yet Costard was doing his thing with Jacquinetta. Now here, again, just straight from Shakespeare's dialogue, but also acted beautifully by Alessandro Navolo, a sense of how the king is not really a ruthless ruler or really that much of a king. He's almost kind of like just a typical college guy. And so he kind of finds it funny that all of this is happening. And he loves Costard. He's not going to punish him that harshly, especially not as harshly as the contract says.
Let's see the penalty on pain of losing her tongue. Who devised this penalty?
Mary, that did I.
Sweet Lord, and why?
But to write them hence with the dread penalty.
No, he basically just tells him that he has to fast for a little while.
This was no damsel neither, sir. She was a virgin.
It is so varied, too, for it was proclaimed a virgin.
If it were, I deny her virginity. I was taken with a maid.
This maid will not serve your turn, sir.
This maid will serve my turn, sir.
You shall fast a week with bran and water.
I'd rather pray a month with mutton and porridge.
And Don Armado shall be your keeper.
Now, this sets up, again, the B-plot, in which Armado, who is supposedly keeping the rule of law, falls in love with Jacquinetta himself. And so, now there's not really ever like a love triangle set up between Armado and Jacquinetta and Costard, but it just kind of happens that Armado is like, hey, Costard, take this letter to Jacquinetta for me. And at the same time, Barone is like, Costard, I need you to take this secret letter to the lady that I'm not supposed to be seeing. And Costard, of course, gets the letters mixed up. The Princess of France ends up getting Armado's letter. We cut back in on the king and his lords briefly as they all try to get a hold of photographs of their respective women and are kind of missing each other and freaking each other out because they don't want each other to know that they're pining and lusting after these women. Cutting back over to the B-plot, we see Jacquinetta gets the letter from Costard, which is actually from Baron, and she takes it to the headmistress, Halifernia, who is kind of a gender-bent version of Halifernes. But please, nobody point out that this character is gender-bent, okay? Because then we're going to have a huge uproar on Twitter about it, even though nobody except me even cares about this movie. They sing the song The Way You Look Tonight, which is actually one of my kids' favorite songs. I have to sing this song a lot to my child, and, going to sleep. And, it's funny to me, until I became a parent, I didn't really realize that song has a real poignant kind of sadness to it. And although it's played for laughs in this, when something happens later and you're looking back on it, I think that sadness was supposed to show through, and to a big fan of the movie like me, it really does. But then again, I've thought about this movie probably more than anybody else has. As Holofernia puts the pieces together, I think it's really funny. There's just this little moment where everybody kind of looks back at each other to see who the blame was, and Costard just goes,
He hath framed a letter to a sequent of the stranger princess, which, accidentally or by way of progression, hath miscarried.
So the boys had this great scene. I can't show it all to you because I get copyright flagged, but I want to show you some clips.
How glad the many millions of Annabelles and Lillians would be to capture me.
They sing the song, I Got a Crush on You. And the opening verse, which if you've ever heard that song, there's a good reason why most people leave the verse out. It is an incredibly conceited piece of music.
How you won me, I shall never.
So each one of the men overhear one of the other men singing and pining away about their women, not realizing that another person is already been watching them, and so it's just this train of people eavesdropping on people, eavesdropping on people, and eavesdropping on people. It's really funny.
It's not that you're attractive, but my heart grew active when you came into view.
Dumaine comes in to class things up by showing he is in fact the best singer in the movie.
We could share the world, will pardon my mush, 'cause I've got a crush, my baby, on you.
And then the cat's out of the bag.
You may look pale, but I should blush. Huh? I know.
As his, your case is such. You chided him, offending twice as much.
There is one particular moment when they're revealing themselves to each other. Again, surprisingly not as kinky as it sounds. I just love... It's the way Alessandro Nivolo delivers this line and the way Kenneth Branagh reacts to it.
I have been closely shrouded in this bush.
Guys, listen, if you can't get into the language, if you can't get into the music, okay, fine. But you gotta admit, there are some hysterical moments in this film. Barone is finally outed because of the letter having been mistook, and once he has been revealed, Kenneth Branagh actually performs quite a lot of Barone's speech. Now, the reason I want to take a moment to focus on this speech is because it is a long piece of the film, and it's done mostly in one take. I really want to draw attention to it because it's actually the longest speech Shakespeare ever wrote. And the entire speech is justifying how to swear off of love is sinful. To basically swear yourself away from the opportunity to have an interaction with being in love and with loving another person is itself a sacrilege. And I think Shakespeare really felt strongly about this. I mean, you read it and it's just gorgeous. It's as beautiful as anything Shakespeare ever wrote. And I'd advise you read the entire monologue. But it's just this beautiful thesis about how love is central to the human experience. It immediately goes into the song Dancing Cheek to Cheek. That song always gets a giggle from my child, and I don't know why. They tear up the contract. And then we get, I think, probably the funniest of the newsflash segments.
Where have all the students gone?
That's right. Where have all the students gone? Weren't they supposed to be learning something? Weren't they supposed to be going to school? Wasn't that what this 3 years was about? And yeah, I think it's actually funny. The play never really addresses or makes a joke about the fact that they never do any studying. But I think it was a good decision on Branagh's part to be like, oh yeah, hold on a second. There's no studying going on here at all. Boyer has overheard the lords discussing their plan to come in disguised and woo their women so that the women never know that they, that they broke their vow or whatever. And the idea is basically like, once the women have fallen for them, they can take off their mask and be like, haha, it's me, you love me, and that somehow is going to work out. I don't know. It's about as half-baked as the contract at the beginning, so it's really in character for these four guys. Now in the play, there's this very prolonged scene, which I featured a lot of in my own adaptation, where the men dress up as Russians, and they come in and they try to woo the women with their Russian accents and their silliness, and the women switch places and basically disguise themselves so that, for instance, Barone would flirt with the princess instead of flirting with Rosaline, and the king would flirt with Rosaline instead of flirting with the princess, and so on. This is a really fun little plot, and of course later on, when the men reveal themselves, the women are like, aha, guess what? You made all these vows to love me and marry me, you made them to the wrong person. So not only did you break the vows in your contract, but haha, now you have to break the other vows because you don't actually love the women that you made these vows to. I love that because it's perjury upon perjury upon perjury. These men just keep, the men just keep disgracing themselves. So let's see. How did Kenneth Branagh adapt that wonderful little moment where the women all switch places and the men are in disguise? How did he adapt that moment?
There may be trouble ahead.
Oh.
Before they ask us to pay the bill, there's moonlight and music and love and
He went a different direction. So the men come back out of their disguises, which really weren't much of disguises. How would they get confused by this? You know what? It doesn't matter. Again, I love this movie. It's so fun. It just so doesn't care about that sort of thing. It's just like, we're just here to have fun. It's a screwball comedy. You wouldn't question it if you saw this sort of nonsense in Top Hat. Actually, if I saw this sort of thing in Top Hat, I probably would question how we got past the censors. And the girls, of course, out the boys as, the men who were disguised and be like, we knew it all along and we tricked you, just like in the play. And it's a very entertaining little scene. And I particularly like the way Branagh delivers these lines. It's really kind of cool, given the way that the film was adapted, that they all end up kind of laughing about how badly they all messed up in this situation. Even the men have enough, kind of sense of humor about themselves to realize, yeah, that was our bad. And I also just really love this scene where King Ferdinand throws a grape up in the air and tries to catch it and just misses phenomenally.
Where's the princess?
That didn't need to be in the movie, but again, I'm thankful. Thank you, Mr. Branagh. Thank you very much. Now, in the play, there is a play within the play called The Nine Worthies, which is presented by Costard and Armato and Sir Nathaniel and Holofernes and Officer Dole, and they present this for the king and his men in The Princess and Her Ladies. In this case, they kind of altered that and make it a single big song and dance number. Yeah, they present a lot of B-roll, including some stuff that's actually in the play, like Moth doing the Hercules wrestling the snake bit. But we don't see any of it. And that makes me think, listen, all 5 of you out there who love this movie as much as me, we need to make a petition or something. I want a director's cut of this movie. I want to see all of those scenes. I know they're out there. I know he must have filmed them because there's B-roll footage of them. But we probably never will. Unfortunately. Nathan Lane's big musical number in this is There's No Business Like Show Business. And then a character named Mercader shows up to tell the Princess of France, guess what? That decrepit, sick, and bedrid father we heard about at the beginning of the show, he's dead now. Because he was, decrepit, sick, and bedrid. Now, in the movie, much like in the play, there's a huge shift in tone. Because up to this point, it has been a very funny little comedy play. But after this point, it dives straight into tragedy. Now, a lot of people have pointed out that Love's Labours actually is kind of the anti-Romeo and Juliet, because Romeo and Juliet is structured much like one of Shakespeare's comedies, but then about midway through, it becomes a tragedy. Whereas this, in the last act or so, just kind of falls into being a tragedy pretty much from one single line. Now, the play is wildly imbalanced in this sense, because it's about a 2.5-hour play, and only the last 20 or so minutes is the tragic element at the end. Whereas in the movie, because so much else has been shortened, they actually end up leaving a full 20-minute section at the end, which is about a quarter of the entire film's runtime for the conclusion, for it to become a true out-and-out tragedy. Now, in this case, I actually think the tragedy element is driven home much better than it is in most theatrical productions of this show, for the simple reason that they have made sure to drench this movie in World War II. It's very obvious that they are on the brink of war, and World War II, we're just ready. Any little event could tip us into that. And I just think that it's wonderful that when we see a huge upheaval like the death of a king, which now doesn't mean much to us as a modern audience, we actually get a sense because of the time period that, oh my gosh, yeah, that could destabilize the country that is trying to, hold its own little territory and not get taken over by Hitler. So when the couple say goodbye, it's genuinely heartfelt, and the performances are grand. I genuinely believe these people are devastated. See, like, I truly believe these couples are afraid that war might break out and they may never see each other again. Now, much like in the play, we are left with the inescapable conclusion that the men were actually trying to woo the women the whole time, and the women thought the men were joking. They didn't realize that the men actually wanted to be with them. They thought it was all a farce. And so at the end, the women ultimately issue the men with some challenges. If you can do X, Y, Z for a whole year and actually stick to it and not go breaking your vow like you've done with every other vow you made, then when I come back in a year, maybe we can work things out. Maybe we can be together. Maybe we actually can really fall in love and it won't be a comedy. And I think that's kind of the unique thing about this. The play does touch on a lot of this, but the film makes it very clear and very, I think it's presented beautifully. This idea that, like, life is like this big screwball, happy-go-lucky fun, and it gives an idea that that was what the world was before war. But when war comes, the musical's over. The fun is over. Even the color tone of the movie shifts dramatically. We come to the very last song in the movie, which is the iconic, hauntingly beautiful song by the Gershwins, They Can't Take That Away From Me. The song is sang by all four men and all four women as the women board a plane a la Casablanca. We get the final line from the play, which in the play was said by Armato, but I think is fittingly said by Barone in the film.
You that way. We this way.
Every movie for the last, 30 years has been nothing but cynical garbage shoved down our throat. I think this movie might be one of the last great happy ending, happy-go-lucky, give the audience a good happy ending. Why? Because it's just the right thing for the story. I think this might be one of the last films to have done that as shamelessly as this film does it. Kenneth Branagh's masterpiece, in my opinion, is a little section at the end, an epilogue called Love's Labours Won. Because you've laughed and you've gone on this adventure and you've enjoyed being friends with these people for an hour and a half. You want to see them back together. And when you see at the end that, yeah, they did keep their vows, they did do it. And visually we see that. Yeah, I just love the way it's presented. It's such a good, happy feeling to end the movie. And we actually get a little tacked on piece as well. Instead of just ending with the play's final line, Branagh ends with Barone's voiceover saying a little line from his big monologue, which kind of drives home how important love is at a time where people are torn apart.
And when love speaks, the voice of all the gods make heaven drowsy with the harmony.
I know it's not popular. I know the critics hated it. Luckily, I'm not a critic. I'm a director. And I'll tell you what, again, it's just one of my favorite movies. I love it. I watch it all the time. It's one of my comfort movies. It's one of the films I go to anytime. I can watch it over and over again. And listen, maybe the Shakespearean dialogue is not for you. Maybe the music is not for you. But I'll tell you something. This is really the only film like it that I've ever seen. Give it a chance. Watch it just once. In fact, you can buy it on YouTube right now. It's for sale for $5. Buy it and just enjoy yourself for an hour and a half. If you don't like it, you really haven't lost anything. But man, if you do, I could see a world where this would be a lot more people's favorite movie. It could be a huge cult movie, but I don't think enough people have heard of it. So guys, help me, please. Spread the word about this fantastic little experimental film by Kenneth Branagh, Love's Labours Lost. Thank you everybody for watching. God bless you, and happy Valentine's Day. See you in the next one.